Shark Sports Radio begins right now. A Celtics fan and a Lakers fan on the same frequency? Oh, this should be good.
I think ultimately the Celtics find a way to hang banner 18 in 6.
In a world where sports media, lifestyles, humor, and commentary collide.
First time since signing LeBron, the Lakers have said, we don't give a shit about LeBron. We have to worry about the future.
Let's take a dive into this tank.
All right, tonight and for weeks to come, we will continue Page Turners. Those new to Page Turners, here's a taste of what it's like. We bring a sports author on to the pod to discuss their book, the idea in writing it, and how it correlates with today's sports world. We appreciate everyone taking the dive in the tank with us for Page Turners tonight. For listening purposes, you can always check us out on Apple Podcasts, SoundCloud, and or Spotify app. Watch us on YouTube at the Shark Sports Radio channel, on TikTok at Shark Sports Radio, and please check us out on X at SSR34_. Paul Knepper is joining us tonight. He's a freelance writer who covered the New York Knicks for the Bleacher Report. He is the author of 2 books, Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet, which we'll be talking about tonight, and the Knicks of the 90s, Ewing, Oakley, Starks, and the Brawlers that almost won it all. Knepper is also a host for New Books in Sports podcast. Knepper grew up in Jericho, New York, and currently lives in Austin, Texas with his wife and his son. He is a graduate at the University of Michigan and Fordham University School of Law. You can purchase Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet on Amazon, University of Nebraska Press, Kindle Store, Google Play Books, and many other platforms. Now let's get into this. What's going on, Paul?
What's up, Mark? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you. I know you're in Austin there. Been there multiple times. Rainy Street, 6th Street. Gotta love it. What's your favorite part of Austin?
I love Barton Springs. You ever hit up Barton Springs? Like the
No, where's that?
It's pretty close to downtown. It's right near Zilker Park. It's a natural springs that is so it's constantly 68 degrees no matter how hot it is here. So
wow.
It's and it gets pretty damn hot here. So it's a fun spot. Lots of people come and just lay out, kind of treat it like a beach, and people jump in and spend the day there. So it's a fun, kind of cool Austin spot. Yeah.
It's always 68 degrees.
Always, yeah.
Wow. Is that the only part of Texas that is that?
I think so. I don't fully understand it, but I guess some of it warms up throughout the day, but I don't know. The water flowing in is always 68 degrees, and it's like there's like a tradition, like the last day of school, like all the high school seniors, all jump into Barton Springs in the morning before school, and so it's like a tradition.
Oh, wow.
And so it's a cool spot.
Cool.
Yeah,
that's cool. Yeah, I'll say this: 68 degrees is like the normal here in the Northeast. So sometimes we get snow, sometimes we get 70 degrees, sometimes we get 90 degrees. It's very, very inconsistent here in the Northeast.
Yeah,
but we'll take it. But we're not here to talk about the weather, even though we could. We're here to talk about Moses Malone, The Life of a Basketball Prophet. Paul, I always like to understand the why when a writer comes on in regards to what they choose for a topic, because I found Moses Malone very, very interesting. Why was Moses Malone your topic of choice?
Yeah, I think it really started with curiosity, Mark. I feel like I know a great deal about the history of the game. I do know a great deal about the history of the game and most of the great players, and I knew relatively little about Moses. In fact, going back, I don't know, this is probably 10, 12 years ago, I thought, man, I you know what, I'm gonna get a book on Moses Malone to learn about him, because I've heard so many old timers talk about how great he was, but I don't really know anything about him. And I looked, I think, on Amazon at the time, and there was no book. And so I was very surprised. I didn't act on that at the time. But I think that kind of planted the seed And after I finished my first book, I was looking for an idea, and I kind of dove in a little bit, did a little preliminary research, and I was like, damn, this guy's story is incredible. Like the first guy to go straight from high school to pros, and he's one of only 9 guys to win 3 or more MVP awards. It's like a pretty prestigious list, and you start looking at the accomplishments of his career, and it's like, wow. So a lot of it was curiosity. It was like, I want to learn more about this guy. And the more I learned, the more I became interested in his story and thought it would make for a great book.
Yeah, Paul, it's such an impressive resume that gets overlooked. I mean, as I was reading it, I'm like, why isn't there more content on this guy? Like you mentioned, Paul, like he was the first player, the pioneer, to go from high school to the pros. And also, he had an impact on players later. Like you mentioned, Kevin Garnett was researching and studying that direction. So I guess what truly kind of impact did Moses Malone really have on these guys when making a decision?
Yeah, I don't know how much those guys, I mean, it was a weird thing because it wasn't like the floodgates opened after he did it. Like he did it, and then the next year, Gerald Dawkins and Bill Willoughby did it. And then it really wasn't done for like another 20 years. Both of those guys were kind of disappointments in their own ways. And I think were kind of immature. And some people thought Willoughby was difficult to coach. And Dawkins was an incredible physical specimen, but never really lived up to his potential. So I think those guys kind of became like warning signs, that and I think the thinking around the league was that Moses was kind of an anomaly. Most of these guys can't do it, no matter how talented they are. And so it took a long time for them to try. I mean, Kevin Garnett did. He researched Moses' journey. But I don't know, Garnett and Kobe and McGrady, like that next group to do it over 20 years later. I don't know how much Moses really, I don't know how much he really influenced them.
No, yeah, that makes sense. He's just a very impactful player, historic player, as we mentioned. And growing up, let's talk about it. He was not big on basketball. He thought it was a sissy game, he called it. But soon enough, he left football and baseball to focus on ball. So why do you think he fell in love with the game so much?
I think, I don't know exactly. I mean, I think the solitary nature of it worked for him, which is weird because it's something I always loved about basketball is that you could work on your game by yourself, or you could play with a team, but you could also just put in the work by yourself, or you could I used to just love to we had a hoop in my parents' driveway, and I'd just go out there for hours and just put up shots, and it was a great stress relief and escape for me. And I think that was it for him. I think he enjoyed playing with other people. Moses was a pretty shy guy, and I think a guy who was in his own head a lot and did his own thing. And I think he liked that he could just go out there all night by himself and work on his game by himself. And there's not really an equivalent of that in football or baseball. And so I think that's something that appealed to him. And then, of course, I think when you're just naturally very gifted at something, that when you're good at something, it's fun, right? And I think pretty quickly he realized oh man, I can, number one, I'm taller than all the other kids, and I could jump higher, and I'm really good at this. And I think that kind of drew him in too.
Yeah, and speaking of trying to be good, right? I think every athlete wants to be an expert and be that methodical, strategic kind of player that can one up their opponent, right? That's the idea. I bring this up because it's in relevance of David Pierre's story, right? When Pierre hung up the poster of Wilt Chamberlain on his wall because he was the best, and Malone was like, "Not on my watch. I'm going to be the best." And a little time after that, Malone was on the wall. So how motivated and determined was Malone to be the best?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a quality of all the greats, when you're talking about the all-time greats, whether it be him or Kobe or Michael or Magic or Larry or, you know, go on down the list. There's a fire in them, you know, that they become obsessed with the game and obsessed with being great, and tremendous competitive spirit. You know, even like Moses, like I talk about in the book, like he treated the All-Star game like it was Game 7 of the NBA Finals. It was like, if I'm suiting up and going out there to play, I'm gonna give it everything I have. And I think in his case, somewhat too, the hunger. I think there was a hunger to escape his situation. He grew up extremely poor, and I think at some point he kind of realized this is my way out. But there's also something inborn, just kind of internal in him, you know, because there are other people I think that would have liked to get out of that situation should have had motivation to do so, but they just didn't have that drive that he had. So I think the situation helped. I think it kind of made him hungry, but I think there was also just kind of a fire inside of him that he was born with, and it drove him.
Yeah, and Paul, you bring up a good point, the inner drive, like the inner instinct to be the best, right? And I had Angels writer Jeff Fletcher on months back, and he covered Shohei Ohtani, and Shohei Ohtani wrote down all of his goals that he wanted to accomplish heading into the MLB. Well, Malone kind of did the same thing on paper, you know, how he wanted to become the best player, the best high school player in the country. Does greatness really come from those little things?
That's a great question. You know, I think it's a big, there's a recipe that goes into greatness. You know, I think to become, you know, Shohei Ohtani, arguably the best baseball player in the world. I think at one time Moses was the best basketball player, or one of the best. I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. I think the drive, absolutely. Obviously, there does need to be talent, but it's a drive, and it's an obsession, really. I think, with being great, and it's a, you know, Moses, he would talk about people, and like, you know, it wasn't just when he was playing. Like, yes, he played all the time, but when he wasn't playing, he was talking about basketball and trying to watch basketball and probably dreaming about basketball. And I'm sure Shohei was like that too. I think something else that in there is I think there's self-confidence. It's not just the drive, but it's the belief. It's the belief that I can do this. Not just I'm going to work hard and see what happens. It's I'm going to work really hard, and this is going to happen. I am going to make this happen. It's almost like they manifest it, right? I think Kobe was like that very much too. So I think the goals, like writing down the goals, kind of aligns with that, because when Moses wrote down that goal that he was going to be the best high school player in the country, that was crazy. Like, that was crazy talk at the time, because he wasn't that good yet. He hadn't been playing that long yet. You know, there wasn't much talent in the area. There wasn't any great coaching. His high school team wasn't very good. There was no reason in the world to believe that this kid would become the best high school player in the country, but he believed it. So I think that there's the drive and the self-belief are two of those things that, and love of the game.
Yeah, passion for sure. I think that's big part of it. And, you know, talk about passion, you know, let's talk what it was. Malone's legacy was hurt because of the de-evaluation of offensive rebounding. You know, it made me think like of the evolution of this game, as you alluded to, and how it's gone from trying to score closest to the basket to trying to score farthest from the basket. I guess what do you prefer?
I don't know. You know, it's hard. I think part of us is always kind of loyal to the way we grew up when we first fell in love with the game, and I fell in love with the game in the 80s, and it was a physical, big man dominating game. So I think I always have a soft spot for that. But I think a lot of the rules have been good. The rule changes have been good. I think, you know, compared to when I was a kid, there was, you know, I think watching 1990s, like the Knicks Heat matchups, and they were like slugfests and like 77, 73 games. And I loved it. And there was a tremendous intensity about it. But I think physicality kind of overtook skill. It became so physical that guys weren't able to showcase their talents. And I think now, the rule changes that were made and the change in style of play really enabled guys like Steph Curry and Kyrie Irving and these magicians with the ball to show off their skills in a way that they wouldn't have been able to back then because they would have been tossed around. But I feel like it's gone a little too far, and I miss post play. I miss post play a little bit, and I think it's too many threes. So it's hard to say. I think there's some good and some bad that have come from the changes. But I remember reading John Thompson's autobiography, the great Georgetown coach, and he said in his book, he said dunks should be worth 3 points, not 3-pointers, because he said it's harder to get a shot close to the basket. It's easy to come down court and pull up, shoot a Steph Curry 3 they're hard to make, but his point is like it's harder to get those shots by the basket, and they should be worth more, which was a really interesting perspective. I don't think that's ever happening, but.
No, it's like you look at the evolution of the game, like you mentioned, you grew up in the 80s, watching basketball. I grew up in the 90s. So, I had the mix of both back to the basket, 3-point shooters, skilled dribblers like, Allen Iverson, like skilled dribblers like Steve Nash, the court vision of Jason Kidd. Like, there was definitely like a mix of both. And now, we're kind of headed towards who can shoot the furthest and how many you can shoot in a row. But it came to my mind with the Chuck Taylor story. I couldn't help but think of the movie Like Mike when I was reading when Coach Hayes gave Chuck Taylors to Malone as long as he practiced every day in them. And so like if he stopped going to practice and he had to return them, right? So every time they stopped, he had to return them. So how much belief did Coach Hayes really have in Malone?
That's a great question. Coach Hayes has been gone a long time, so unfortunately I don't have an opportunity to talk to him, but clearly he saw something in him, right? One thing about Coach Hayes is I don't know how specific it was to Moses. What I mean by that is like I talked to a lot of Moses' teammates, and they all said Coach Hayes was like a father figure to them and looked out for them in a lot of ways. Even there were times when like they didn't bring lunch to school because they didn't have any money for lunch, and Coach would slip them some money and get them lunch. So I think that was Coach Hayes' nature to look out for young kids, and I think he saw something in Moses. I think he saw some potential, and there was probably some selfishness too. Like, hey, I want this guy on my team. He's got talent. But I think he was just a kind, giving man, and wanted to help him. I'm guessing here, but I don't think Pro Hayes knew Moses would become Moses, even or anywhere close. But I think he saw a kid with talent who needed a little help, and tried to give him a push.
An opportunity, right?
Yeah.
Opportunities come knocking. Moses Malone is waiting for you. So. Speaking of opportunities, he won back-to-back MVPs with different teams in the Rockets in 1982 and the Sixers in 1983. How impressive is that feat, especially if you're going from one team to another?
It's very impressive. It hasn't been done before. He's the only person to do that. It's very impressive because I think we look at sometimes we put too much on an individual. On a team's success. Obviously in the NBA, that one guy could make a huge difference, but you're playing with other players, and there are other factors at play, and you're dependent on your teammates to an extent. So to be able to be that dominant, that you go from one situation to another, and it was two very different roles too. In that, like the Rockets team he was on was a very mediocre team, and he really lifted them up by himself. But there are guys that can lift mediocre teams, and then don't necessarily gel as well can't necessarily fit in well with a good team, or there's, ego issues, whatever. So then he left there and he went to play with a super talented 76ers team that just went to the finals and had the great Dr. J on the team, and somehow managed to kind of fit in with what they were doing and just make them better. So it showed that I think it showed that he wasn't just like a stat guy or a guy that puts up numbers on or puts up numbers on a mediocre team. Like here he's showing. No, they won over 60 games. They were one of the greatest teams ever, and he was the best player on that team. So I think that said a lot for his legacy.
Yeah, and while you were talking too, a guy that came to my mind is like Jokic, right? Like you take Jokic off of Denver, like Denver's not a good team without him, right? He is the team. They do have pieces around him now, but you take him off the team and add him to like, I don't know, the Sixers now. Like you're talking, it's crazy. So it's a fun way to look at it because it really brings the impact in regards to how big the player was and has been.
It's funny. So funny you mentioned, not to cut you off, but it's funny you mentioned Jokic because I think if Jokic, Moses got old kind of young. You know what I mean? He started declining at a relatively young age. I think if Jokic started declining right now, or maybe a better way to put it, but at this point in their careers, I think Moses and Jokic had actually very similar careers. They each have three MVP awards. They each won one championship. They were the best player in the game for a period of time. Both, I'm sure Jokic will go down. I think 20 years from now, people will not be talking about Jokic as much as some of his contemporaries, much like Moses, much like we don't talk about Tim Duncan as much as we talk about Shaq and Kobe. Jokic has a little of that like Moses. He's a quiet guy. He has no interest in being famous. He has no interest in being a superstar. And so I think he flies under the radar a little bit like Moses does. And we talk about him because he's so freaking good right now. But I think history, like I said, like 20 years from now, he won't get talked about as much as Durant and Steph and LeBron, and he's in that class, but he doesn't have the I don't know, you know what I mean? He doesn't have the persona. He's not in the kind of commercials that they are.
It's not only that too. I mean, you probably remember this, but when they won the championship in 2023, he was like, all right, when can I go home?
Yeah, I want to see my horses.
I want to see my horses. And I'm like, this guy is bored with basketball. Yeah. He's so good that he's so bored. And it's not like the fans can't grasp onto that, right? So I think there was a missed opportunity when they won the championship that he could have made something into his, like you said, persona.
Absolutely. But I think the thing is, and I think this is how he's like Moses, he didn't give a damn. He doesn't care. He's not meeting with his agent and be like, hey, how can we raise my profile? Like he's not after they won the championship, exactly that. He's like, he just wanted to go back home to Serbia. He didn't want to he could have, like you said, they could have shot a documentary on, winning the championship or whatever and built, because all these athletes are doing their own documentaries now and this and that. Like he didn't want to. And that was like Moses too. And again, Tim Duncan, same way. Like they're just like, I found something very endearing about that, actually, about Moses and both of those other guys I mentioned too, because they're not interested in any of the bullshit. They just want to play ball. They just want to play ball. They have no interest in being famous. They're passing up extra money, realistically, by not elevating their profile, but they don't care. They don't care about the media. They don't care about the public perception. They just want to play ball. And as a basketball fan, I think that's wonderful.
Yeah, and Paul, you bring up a good point there because, I mean, back when Moses Malone was playing, there was no Twitter, there was no social media. So, I think a lot of people just grasp onto that, and that's when they get into the hype train, and that's when they get into the algorithms. And it's like, you don't really, you miss that passion. You miss that organic passion for basketball. And I think that's something that Moses Malone had playing during his days. So, so I know you wrote about the Knicks in the 90s. Yes, touchy subject here in Boston, but I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the Knicks and how they won the 2026 NBA championship. How do you feel?
Man, Mark, I don't even, first of all, it's been the best basketball year ever for me because I went to the University of Michigan and they won the national championship in basketball. And now in college, and now the Knicks won. But the Knicks, it's been a couple months now. I still kind of can't believe it's real. I have one buddy of mine and my wife just yesterday. I texted her, "Did that really happen? Did they really do it?" And like I'm still just kind of in disbelief. And I don't even know what to say. I really, I've been a Knicks fan since the mid to late 80s. And we had a lot of lean years, and we had some good years where we came close but couldn't get it. But and it's hard to wrap my head around too, because I like to think I'm a pretty realistic fan. I'm pretty knowledgeable about the game. I'm not one of these, I don't know. A lot of fans out there are delusional. I'm not a delusional fan. And I looked at this team and I thought they could be very good. I didn't see a pathway for them to be great. I just didn't see how that would happen with this team. And they did. They were great. I mean, they won 15 of their last 16 playoff games. I don't, this isn't and this isn't the Steph and Clay and Draymond Warriors. This isn't Michael and Scotty. This isn't Magic and Kareem. How the heck did this team go on that kind of run? It's not just the fact that it was incredible. It's that it caught me so off guard too. That I'm still I still don't really understand how it happened.
Paul,
but it's wonderful.
You gotta enjoy that moment. I mean, it only comes, so many times.
It had been. Well, put it this way: I'm 49 years old. It had been 53 years since it happened last time, right? So it may not happen again in my lifetime. So that could be it.
Yeah, I know, but I was thinking about it too the other day. You look at OKC and how they built, a team, right? It's not always about 3 or 4 guys. It's always about the ingredients of a team. It's the bench, it's your starters, it's your leader in Jalen Brunson, it's your coach. I mean, Woodson, he had a great year. Brown. Mike Brown had a great year. And it's one of those things where you look back on it and you can say the same thing with OKC. OKC had no business winning that. But SGA, the way that he's constituted that team, it's just one of those things where you have an orchestrator on the court. He knows what to do. He can facilitate at a high level. They can defend. They can play both ways. It's just, for me, looking from afar with the Knicks, I enjoyed watching that team because they play with so much heart. And that was something that kind of was missing, throughout these, last championship years. And the Celtics, they won pretty, right? And they won outstanding against the Dallas Mavericks. But if you look at how dominant the Knicks were in this playoffs, it was unheard of. It was unheard of. So
and I think again, I'm very biased, obviously, but I would think from fans of other teams or fans of basketball that I would think they're pretty likable, or at least not. They're not really hateable. There's no. Jalen Brunson's not a polarizing personality. There's not, as you said, they weren't they're not the most talented championship team ever, but they played hard. They played together. They moved the ball. They played defense. They played the right way. And then the guys on the team, I guess I could see people not liking Cat. Hell, I didn't like Cat 6 months ago, but he's not a bad guy. But some of those guys OG Anunoby, Mikal Bridges, there's really nothing dislikable about those guys. They're just quiet guys who just go about their business and play hard.
But they all have I will say this too with that next team. They had a chip on their shoulder, every single person on that team. I mean, look at Jalen Brunson. Everybody had, their eyes elsewhere in Dallas. They were looking at Luka Doncic. And I'm a big Providence College Friars fan. I've had season tickets for a long time. And Jalen Brunson has always come into the dunk and demolished the Friars. So it was just one of those things where I knew he was going to translate, didn't know he was going to translate this well. And also the adversity with Cat, I mean, he lost his parents, you know what I mean? And anytime that hits home, especially his mom, he loved, absolutely adored his mom. He'd bring her on to press conferences. He'd bring her to celebrations, locker room, be there after the game. So I think there was an extra chip just to say I'm here. And you know what? If I can make it, a part of the Knicks organization and win a championship, I can have my stamp of approval for a long time in the NBA. So I just think of that as like there's small stories and top, a part of a complete team.
Yeah.
And so it really made sense. And Mikal Bridges, same type of thing. OG Anunoby, right? We can go down the line. So, but we did get Mitchell Robinson from you guys. So
You did. His Mitch.
Yes.
I love Mitch. Love Mitch. That'll help. Mitch does a couple things really, really well. And the free throw three would drive you crazy. It'll drive you crazy. But he does a couple things really well. I mean, he's the best offensive rebounder in the league, I think. So
he is.
You'll enjoy that.
Yeah, we need offensive rebound. We need rebounding in general. So before we go, I always like to ask an author, what their favorite memorabilia is. Like, I like to change things up. I know people have different collections, and you're a Knicks fan, so you must have something Knicks oriented. So I guess what's your favorite piece of memorabilia?
I'm looking at some of it right now. I'll give you two. All right. One is I'm 22 years old. I just graduated college, and I went to the Yankee Stadium. I'm not as much now, but I was a huge Yankee fan forever. And I'm sitting like behind the batter, just to the right of the net. And the nets didn't extend nearly as far as they do now. And Derek Jeter hit a screamer right back at us. And I put up my hand like this, and I didn't catch it. Hit my hands, but I hit my hand, dropped down, I scooped it up. And I'm going to show you right now. I have it right here.
Oh,
this is you can see that the smudge mark where the bat hit it. And so that is cool. I was, as a kid, I was still young, but that's like the dream to get a foul ball at a game. And I guess the fact that it was Jeter, and by the way, I thought I broke my hand for a few days. It was killing me because it was a hard line drive, and I went for it. But I got it. And then the other one was I wrote for a startup website years ago when I lived in New York for most of my life, and I was living in New York City. And one day I in my mailbox, I get mail addressed to Walt Frazier, the Knicks legend Walt Frazier. I don't know if it says Walt Frazier, but he's like arguably the greatest Knick ever. So we have a doorman in the building. I go to the doorman. I'm like, I got this letter. I was like, is this the Walt Frazier? He goes, yeah. He goes, he lives here. We looked at it, and it was like, I think I was in apartment 4B and he was in 3B. So maybe it was like misaddressed, or they put in the wrong one. So this happened. It happened once, and it happened a few months later. It happened again. I got his mail. So I told my wife, I freaking love Walt Frazier. And so I wrote, so I had written an article for the startup website a couple months earlier about Walt Frazier. And it was about Game 7 of the 1970 finals, known as the Willis Reed game. Well, Willis Reed limps on the court.
Willis Reed. Yeah.
Everyone knows it as the Willis Reed game. Walt Frazier had 36 points, 19 assists, 7 rebounds, and 5 steals in Game 7. Willis Reed had 4 points. He was like the emotional inspiration, but Walt Frazier won that game. I mean, 19 assists,
hands down.
And so I wrote an article about that. And so I mentioned to my wife, I said, I just wrote an article about him. Here I'm getting his mail. She's like, why don't you print out the article, tell him you wrote it, for this website, put it under his door, and say, I got your mail accidentally. I live a floor above you. I wrote this article about you. Hope you enjoy it, whatever. So I do that. This is on like a Friday. And we went away for the weekend. We come back Monday, and my doorman is like, I got something for you. So he shows me it's a signed picture from Walt Frazier saying, "Dear Paul, I love the article, Walt Clyde Frazier." I was like,
"Oh, that is
so
awesome."
I have that on my wall here.
Oh, what a story! That's incredible. That's why I love just these organic gifts. You're not going to a game and having him sign an autograph. There's a story behind it.
I randomly got his mail. It was so weird.
Yeah. And you didn't even know he was in the same building.
Didn't even know. No, I said to the guy, I'm like, is this the Walt Frazier? He's like, yeah.
That's crazy. That is crazy.
And it
Oh,
wasn't.
that's
It's
so
like, it
good.
wasn't like frankly, I'd expected to have lived in a nicer building. It was nice and it was okay, but like I'm not.
Yeah.
I don't have that.
Well,
kind of money.
nowadays he'd be probably in like a mansion or like
Yeah.
somewhere in a nice condo.
Yeah.
But no, this has been great, Paul. Can't thank you enough. I mean, the Facebook page again, Basketball Books. It's been awesome to see everybody's like participation and just talking it up. It's really community, right?
Yeah.
And,
It's been great.
Just I thank you for having me join, and thanks for joining tonight and talking about Moses Malone.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Mark. It's been fun.
All right.